It is now my pleasure to introduce Caitlin Flanagan is a colleague of Elizabeth Bruenig at The Atlantic, where they're both staff writers. A brilliant social commentator, Caitlin is author of 2 books, Girlland and To Hell with All That, so you can see that she became angrier as time went on. And she is a Pulitzer Prize finalist, as well as the recipient of a National Magazine Award for reviews and criticism. Caitlin is also a frequent guest on Real Time with Bill Maher. Please welcome Caitlin Flanagan. Caitlin, who didn't recognize one word of that introduction. It wasn't until I got to the very end that she went, "Oh my gosh, that's me." None of the accolades, none of the titles, no, nothing. Now she denies that she wrote To Hell with All That.
But I wrote that introduction also, so I have to claim it. Well, I was supposed to be here to introduce my great friend and colleague at The Atlantic, Liz Bruenig. But unfortunately, 2 days ago, she took a very bad fall, and she's having surgery tomorrow. And she just feels so brokenhearted that she couldn't come here. But I promise you I'm going to take her award and have it at FedEx first thing in the morning. The first thing you have to know about Liz is that she has so much light in her. She's very young. She's only 32. She's married to her high school boyfriend. She never has dated anyone else in her life. She loves raising her 2 little girls. And she's extremely good at baking. She has an Instagram account about her baking. But despite all of these wonderful places and times she could be present for, she plunges herself over and over again into the underworld of America's judicial killings. She has an unshakable certainty that no matter what a person has done or what experience he has endured, that he carries the indelible and recognizable mark of humanity. Her reporting is deep. She's been through every part of the system other than being in the chamber itself. She's spent weeks getting to know men who are going to be executed. She sat with their families during the executions. She sat with lawyers in those frantic last-minute moments to find out if there's any possibility of a stay. And she does it over and over again. And she's been particularly involved in what's going on in Alabama right now. I don't know, maybe a lot of you are aware of this, but in Alabama, they have had repeated and grotesque events happen in the piece of time between a man leaving his cell and appearing again in the execution chamber. And what's been happening is that when they practice lethal injection, and to have a lethal injection, you need to have 2 IV lines established. And it's very hard to do that. Nurses are the people who really know how to give IVs, and they won't go near it. You know, the American Association of Nurses has a very strong stance against capital punishment and has said, and they've several times said to these various prisons, stop calling us, stop calling our members, we won't do that. And for whatever reason, whoever Alabama has found to establish IVs, which isn't a difficult thing for a skilled person to do, is beyond incompetent. And men have been essentially tortured for hours at a time. With everybody wondering, where are they? Why are they not coming forward to this execution chamber? And what's happened has been absolutely indescribable. And the state had kept denying it. And so she was part of an effort to exhume the body of, let me remember his name. I have it here. Well, I can't now find his name. Oh, yes, here he is. I know his last name is Mr. James. That's all I have down at the moment. But she was part of this great effort last year to exhume. He was gone missing for so long, 3 hours in between when he left his cell and when he appeared in the execution chamber. And when he appeared there, he was totally out of it. He was seemingly drugged. He had no final words. And people who know him said, that's very strange. He always had something to say about everything. And so she was part of an effort and got his body exhumed and had a private autopsy conducted. And she was in that autopsy, and she described it this way. He couldn't tell his story, but his body told his story. The pathologist said there was clearly multiple failed attempts to set an intravenous execution line. There were puncture wounds in his arm muscles that appear to be unrelated to efforts to insert the ID, multiple unexplained incisions, and bleeding and bruising around Mr. James' wrists where he was strapped to the gurney. Liz called this execution lengthy and painful, and a private doctor who also attended the autopsy said the execution team that carried it out was unqualified for the task in a most dramatic way. And I think partly because of this work Liz did, Alabama has taken a moratorium for the past 3 months. But now they claim that they're going to get back into it, the game of it, and they say they've done all these wonderful new things. They're going to add more available medical personnel for executions, and they've conducted multiple rehearsals to ensure the staff are well-trained and prepared to carry out their duties during the execution process. What makes Liz's stories stand out is the fact that there's always a golden thread running through them. It'll appear and then go away and appear again. And what that golden thread is, it's a very clear description of this person's humanity. She was at the execution of James Cox in Mississippi. And when she was driving down from Memphis, she remembered that his family had told him his job had been a truck driver, and he loved that work. And as she was driving down, she writes, I thought of Cox's life on the road during the drive south from Memphis. Maybe he once worked routes like these, where raw cotton fibers blow back from great heaping bales stacked on the beds of semi-trucks crisscrossing the Delta. It would have been his last taste of real freedom, his closest brush with clean living. Afterwards, when he was dead and she was taking those same roads north again, she thought about his description of the prison. It was filled with vermin, it was freezing cold in the winter, it was sweltering in the summer, and she thought about how much that matched the incredible poverty and squalor of his young years, and that these two things should be matched, that death and that early life. She wrote, and at one point he and his family had literally lived in a chicken coop. I thought of Cox peering up at the stars through the hole in that chicken coop he'd lived in with his mother and sister, with the fowl and the pigs squawking and shuffling nearby. Everything had ended more or less the way it began for him. Misery to misery, isolation to isolation, dust to dust. Liz says that death row prisoners don't need execution. They need reconciliation and forgiveness, and those are the same things that all of us need. So I'm very proud to accept this award on her behalf. Thank you for giving it to her.